Well, welcome everybody. We're delighted you're here with us for the this Monday masterclass. We've got, I think, a very helpful, very practical topic. We're going to talk about how to use that save as function and how to use the search function. And our own dear Scott Bertelson is going to be taking us through this, right, Scott?
That's right.
There's a lot to this, Scott. I think you and I were nervous about this save as function until we got it in place because, for years we had Excel and we moved over to the cloud version. And the one darn thing that Excel could do that our cloud version couldn't do was just a good old save as. And
Yeah.
turns out there's lots of reasons to want to have that. So I think you and I both felt a great sense of relief when that save as function was up in the cloud. And then we built the search function and kept adding to that. Now it's quite powerful. So I'll stop talking. If you want to take over, Scott, we will sit in rapt attention as you show us how the search function and the save as function work.
Beautiful. All right. All right. Can you see my screen okay?
You bet you. We are there on the Blueprinting Center.
All right, friends. So we're going to start in the Blueprinting Center, which is always going to be a good place to start. So a quick overview, if you haven't been in here recently, Blueprinting Center is where everything blueprinting is. E-learning, we're not going to go there. Blue Tools is where we have all the aids we can use, and tools and templates. Of course, Open Blueprinter 5.0, but what we think is a really great resource, and we continue, it's a very dynamic resource, we keep adding to it, keep building it, is BlueHelp, and that's where we're going to go today. Before we look at these actual features, we're going to show you where they are in BlueHelp. So if I select BlueHelp, it takes me to the BlueHelp homepage. Now there's a couple of different ways you can find the help you're looking for. You can try to think through the logic of how we selected something, where we organize it, and you would select Blueprinter software or something, and we have it organized by step and whatnot. Or now if you want to go back out to the top level, right there at the top, BlueHelp does that. What we actually recommend is just to type in the search bar, and that way you don't have to reconstruct our logic. So we're going to begin with the search feature. And you see I type in search, and a couple things come up that's interesting. Actually, this number 2 is the one we're looking for. And we're also going to take a peek at this number 3. How do I import a discovery interview from another project? The reason that shows up there, which might not be super obvious to you, is you actually use the search function to do that. But we're going to start out with search in general. So I'm going to select this second article. And search works pretty much as you would think it does. But within the article, so what do we use it for? We use it to mine insights from past discovery interviews. So it does not search what's in step 1 or step 3, at least today. That might be something we add in the future. But for today, search is only about uncovering what you have learned, or searching through what you've uncovered in previous qualitative discovery interviews. And as I mentioned before, a pretty cool aspect about it is you can use a search to import import a discovery interview into another project. And so it's not that that's a difficult task, but it's a highly useful task. It does have some specific instructions. But anyway, so working through this article, the search, where do you find it? It's up in the upper left nav bar. And from there, you're able to create a bunch of filters to filter through your data. And of course, as you might imagine, you can ultimately type in a search term. So rather than go through too much through the instructions, let me bring over Blueprinter software, and let's go through this together. So we call this the hamburger menu. I'm not sure where that term comes from, but it's the menu icon, certainly something you're familiar with from almost every application you use probably. So when we select that, here we have search interview notes in the left navigation bar. So I select that. Now here are some different filters that I can dial in. But if I type in box, for example, and this is, I'm actually in the demo file, in which we're creating blanks for companies that make boxes.
And Scott,
So yeah,
just for everybody's clarity, they would be searching every discovery interview in their company that wasn't deliberately cloaked, correct?
exactly, exactly. If you cloak a note, as we'll also discuss later, that hides it from search. And the reason we do that is if well, if it's cloaked so that it's hidden from searches, because there could be some sensitive information in that. There's actually another reason we cloak too that I'll go into. And exactly as Dan mentioned, because when I was in this, it says show me, and we see this little filter image right there. Because all I did was type in the word box. It's showing me everything in my company that's not cloaked, from any date range, any type of sticky note, everything. Okay. Now, let's imagine I want to dial that in a little bit more. And so instead of all projects in my company, maybe I want to just limit it to this demo. Okay, so from there, I can also limit it to any date range. But you know what? For right now, um, we're not gonna add a date range. And so then within the sticky notes, we can either look at all sticky notes, or you might want to look at just the top picks, or perhaps you want to look at just must-haves, which obviously have a smaller segment there, or we can look at all top picks and all must-haves. And certainly you can imagine some scenarios where if you've done, a lot of projects in a particular area, there was a reason why they were selected as top picks during an interview, and there's also a reason why some notes were not selected as top picks. And so you may want to just focus on the most critical ones. We'll just go with all top picks. And then the final filter is you might want to only include sticky notes that have numbers in them, in which maybe there's some date, there's some particular ranges of something. So in this case, we have some performance numbers, for example. This brings it only down to 1. But what
And
I want to
Scott,
show you, yeah, go ahead.
maybe on this one, it's a good time to mention this. Why are we doing that? Well, when people, are working on their projects, they want to try to figure out how they can build a value calculator. And so this way they can look for numerical values and how many minutes this took, how much that cost, how long, how many years it should last. So here's a tip. As you and your teams are doing your interviews, if somebody says, this took 3 minutes to do, don't write THREE, write the number, the numerical 3. And it's just a quick way, a little practice to get into. So later when you're building a value calculator, you can see all your numerical values very quickly.
Yep, exactly. That was our motivation for that. Now, after you put in the search, notice it lets you know what filters you have here. So if you wanted to change something, so maybe numerical values, that's only has this with a single note. So maybe I'll take that back out. But I still like the idea of only having top picks, and again, searching all projects. So now once you've used the filters you want, you can either select individual outcomes. And why are we selecting them, by the way? We're selecting them because we're going to import them. We're going to import them into a new interview. And I put new in quotes because obviously you haven't done another interview, but that's where it will be listed. It'll be listed under step 2 as if it was a separate customer. But we'll show you how you do that here in a second. So let's imagine that you don't want to select everything. By the way, if you did, you can just select that box right there. But let's imagine that you're looking for something very specific. And so you're reading through these box filling errors, and maybe that's not the one you're looking for. So you've selected some very specific items, maybe just these 3. Now that you've chosen them, and again, the reason you've chosen them is because you want to save these under a new interview. And so this is the import emblem right here, or icons. If I select that, now I can bring these into a current customer. Although more commonly, I believe you'll probably want to bring those into a new note board. And so selecting new as most common. I mean, why would that be the most common scenario? Well, you interviewed Amazon, you interviewed LL Bean, bringing these into those. If folks in the future, we've got to always remember the folks that follow in behind us. They could be confused and might think those came from that Amazon interview. Nonetheless, you do have that ability if you choose. So if we go to select new, and we get a default name for this group of outcomes we're going to bring in. In this case, it says interview search for box. I could change that name, but I'm going to leave it as is. And so now I select the import button, and it gives me this button. This success flag does not stay a long time, but it gives you this confirmation that these 3 notes were successfully imported. Okay, so by the way, any questions so far before I kind of show you where these turn up?
While they're thinking about any questions, oh, go ahead. Christopher's asking, is it possible to review the results from the search before importing?
Yeah, that's what we're looking at right here. This is the results of the search. We have not imported anything. So what I did is I did the search, and then I looked at all the results from the search, and then I only selected the very specific ones I wanted to bring in. So I'm looking at that now. This is what we're viewing right now. Unless I misunderstood the question.
No, I think that's good. And just a point of clarification, and I'm not sure about this. I don't think these are abbreviated. If you had a really long sticky note, would it show you the whole sticky note here or not?
Everything comes over. Everything comes over.
So it is a bit of a preview. Mm-hmm.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right.
And let me throw in something here that I had to kind of wrap my brain around that might be helpful for people. Notice Scott is doing this, all this searching is being done within a project.
Right.
So there's really not a search where you just start on the main My Projects page. You always go into a project. So it's all about searching to help your project. So remember, that's where you start, your project, and then you start the menu, and then away you go. And again, the search is just within your company.
Great point. Yep. Yes, this is all, you have to go within a project first. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So let's go see where these turned up. So there's multiple ways you can navigate this, but we're going to go to Project Home right there. And we're going to go to step 2, because remember, this was only searching within the discovery interviews that we've done previously. It was not searching what was in step 1. It didn't search what was in step 3 or anywhere else. Only within the discovery interviews. And so that's where the results will also show up. So we'll go into 2.5, conduct discovery interviews, and it will be at the bottom. Here you see the actual real interviews, and then here you have interview search for box. So if I select this, it's like, first of all, you might say, uh-oh, it must not have worked because it says 0 notes there. But actually, let's select problems. Before you make that support call to us, select problems and look underneath. And here you can see the 3 notes came through, these 3 top picks. Now, the reason that number didn't show up is because they are cloaked. That means they will be hidden from future searches. Hidden from future searches. The reason that there's the original reason for the cloaking feature was that if you have a sensitive project that's just, you really want to, for whatever reason, you don't want those to show up. Now, the reason that the search results are cloaked is so that they don't keep coming up over and over. Imagine if now we can change the status. We can manually override this if we choose, and we can remove that cloak. I'm sorry, what am I doing? I'm opening the note, and I can select this yellow. And so I'm overriding that natural, what's the cloaking. But unfortunately, what will happen if I do that is that if Dan comes in behind me, does another search, these notes will come up twice because they'll come up from the original interview and they'll now come up here from this interview. For that reason, they come in as cloaked. And by the way, since we're looking at this, if you were in an interview and a particular note you did need, or for whatever reason, it was sensitive information, you did not want that to come up, you see how I did that. I just changed it from yellow to gray. Now, it could have been green or blue or even background information. and turn it gray. So you can manually cloak it like that. Now this is the demo project, so I can't create too much chaos no matter what I do here.
And while we're on cloaking, Scott, so the folks can cloak a sticky note during the interview, and then if they want to cloak their entire project, they can do that back on the menu under project settings, and I think even on the My Project screen, correct?
That's right. We've changed how that works a little bit, hadn't we?
Mm-hmm.
So do we have a question? I thought I saw the chat box flash. Can you see that, Dan?
Yes. How do you recommend? In fact, let me go ahead, and I realize I didn't get it up here. How do you recommend handling information that would be related to an ITAR project? So this would be something that, for government security reasons, it couldn't be handled. Now, Tom is asking clocking or another method. Tom, I'm not familiar with clocking. Can you educate me on that a little bit?
I spelled it wrong, Dan. Cloaking.
Oh, okay, very good. Then that's exactly what I would do. In fact, I think what I would do, Tom, is I would cloak the whole project for an ITAR project. And so as you point out, and I've learned from you and some of your colleagues, you really want to work on a need-to-know basis for these ITAR projects, don't you?
Yes.
So Scott, while we're on that, do you mind just Xing out of this screen? We'll just show real quick on the project settings where they can do that.
Yeah, sorry. Sometimes I go a little fast, don't I? So it's there. So back to the menu, and then we have changed how this operates. I believe we do have it here under settings. And so here you see what Dan's referring to. You see search visibility. So not cloaked, visible to everyone. And then we have cloaked. And again, this is only about search visibility. This is not about the project's visibility. The project is visible based on whoever's on the team. We'll be able to see it. So this is only about search visibility. And then practically speaking, practice project is the same as cloaked, but for search visibility, because you don't want your search results coming up when you're practicing or whatever. You don't want that kind of noise showing up in your searches.
Mm-hmm. So I think you nailed it, Tom. If it's an ITAR project, probably just cloak the whole project. If you're in an interview and you're maybe under a non-disclosure agreement, you probably want to say at the end of the interview, hey, listen, we're under non-disclosure. As we said, this is a market-facing project. We're collecting these generic things. However, was there anything in this interview, sir, ma'am, that you feel should be kept as a secret? And they go, oh yeah, sticky note number 18. That's when you go up and you make sticky note number 18, turn it from yellow or green to gray, and maybe even put on the top, secret and something like that. That's probably the best way. Good question, Tom. Did that handle okay?
Yes, sir. That works.
Thank you.
I'll work on my spelling too.
You had me going there. I love it.
And I want to clock. Sounds very violent. So I want to share one thing Dan was talking about as far as the color. Notice, and I think this works in the demo project like it does normally. So notice how this bar is blue right there. So I go down here, project settings, change this. Oh, it's cloaked.
I think the demo project won't do it, but you're exactly right. Everything turns white, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've got a separate demo that isn't categorized that way. So notice how that's blue, and let's see if this does it behave better. Now does it like my name being too low? It likes that better. Okay, so now I've got this one cloaked. And look how that changed from blue to gray. From blue to gray. It's subtle, but that gray bar will persist wherever you are in the project. It says cloaked, and see the little hidden mask or little mask symbol, clandestine icon. So
is that something only the team leader has capabilities of doing, or all team members?
Anybody can do it.
Okay.
Anybody can do it. So let's change that back. Great question, though. I mean, we don't have any different levels of access rights within the project, which is why there's a few things that we have, a few aspects, such as, nothing is really right today anyway. We don't let you delete anything. It's for that same reason. It helps us to get helps us to have a very robust program that you can't create too much havoc in, because you can't delete things. But as part of that, that's also, but we're able to, or we do that so we can get away with not having an admin level or different levels of.
In other words, it's almost impossible to do too much damage. We've all during our careers been on at least one project team with one knucklehead, right? So
yeah. That's right. Which, by the way, yeah, during our meeting, we have this knucklehead persona. That's the word we use. We try to think of how we could mess this up, and then we think about how we might mess it up. Then we hopefully we keep it where nobody can mess something up. All right. So any questions about that search? If then I want to show a unique thing you can do with search. It's pretty cool. All right, so let's say that, and so by the way, I have the instructions for this as well. Let me pull another screen back over. So let's go back to, so this is the, let's go back to the main screen of Blue Help, and I'm going to type in search again. All right, let's see, type in import, see what that does. How do I import a discovery interview from another project? And by the way, one reason we really like for you to use this search bar is we get feedback on how well you're able to find what you're looking for. And that way, if you're thinking about it one way, you're using a search term, your results aren't coming up, we get feedback on that in the background. So that helps us to continue to perfect the search function. Anyway, or within here. So how do I import a discovery interview from another project? So I select that, and here are the instructions. It's not overly difficult, but there are certain ways you need to think about it. And these instructions, I believe, are pretty clear. So you begin by opening the destination project. So you open the project that you want to bring the notes into. Then you use the search function, and when you get to the very end, you select whichever interview, but then you select all the notes from that. So let's do that in real life now. So we're in this project, this recently renamed project, hydraulic pumps for ZTRs. So I go to search interview notes. So back to this project, and now I'm going to select the individual, whichever one I want to bring in. We're going to go with Beam Innovation here.
Scott, could you back up just 1 second?
Sure.
Here's a part that kind of tripped me up a little bit. Just
Yeah.
maybe start this section one more time, if you don't mind. Just maybe go back to my projects, or go back to the dash. Yeah, that's it. And here's what goofed me up. If you go ahead and hit this, because you had to explain this to me. Yeah, go ahead and hit search again. If you don't mind.
Yeah. So as a reminder, we're in the destination project. We're in the project we want to bring them into.
Yep.
So we've got to search interview notes.
So now, so here's what's interesting. So if you do the show me, and notice the second field is all dates. So it doesn't say that you're going to be able to look at a specific interview, right? But now go ahead and do what you're doing. When you change the all projects to a specific project, now that second field turns into all interviews, and now you can select a specific interview.
Right. So now notice the mistake I made a minute ago is putting anything in there. So you don't put anything in keywords if you want to bring a whole interview over. And let's go to Beam Innovation interview right here. We're going to say all sticky notes because we want to bring them all in. We're going to select them all, and then now we're going to import this into back into this project. So go down to new, and so maybe I'll call this, Beam interview. Right there. Check import. It gives me this confirmation. And now let's go in. We go back into step 2. Tool 2.5, and at the bottom there's where we imported this interview. And again, same logic as before, they're all closed.
So to kind of recap then, Scott, see if I got this. Basically, you use the search function, you don't put a search term in, You then select a specific project, and then that shows you all the particular interviews, and you pick an interview, select them all, and you bring it in. So a real handy way of bringing in an entire interview from another project in your company into your project, right?
Right. Yep, exactly. And again, in the Blue Help, there are step-by-step instructions, which I should have followed more carefully. right there to do that. So any questions about how to import an interview into a project? If not, the last feature we're going to show you is very straightforward as far as how it works. It's the save as. And so I think what's a more interesting, it's fairly easy to use. So save as saves an exact duplicate of your project. Another thing you can do is only save step 1. And again, you give it another name, or only save step 1 and 2. So those are your 3 options for using save as. Other than that, if you select save everything, it works exactly like save as does within Excel or whatever you use. So I think what's more interesting then is not how it works, but the reasons you might use these different options. So one reason for, I'll just leave it up here. So one reason to save everything is, and this is a scenario that's come up, is anytime you're going to perform some major surgery on your project and you're worried you might mess something up from before. And really the only scenario that's or the most common one that's come up is, say that somebody has already begun, actually I will cancel out, they've already begun preference interviews. So they have already, so I'm in step 3, 3.4, and well, it's yelling at me here a little bit because I haven't fully prepared here. But if I've already done some preference interviews and I'm like, oh golly, after I've started, I realized that I really want to change an outcome, or I really want to change the language, but I'm a little concerned, and you can do that. We won't go into that right now, but you certainly don't want to lose what you learned from your previous interviews. That's one reason to do a save everything in case you make a mistake when doing that. Now, when would you use only save step 1? Well, this scenario, I'm gonna X out of this again. So imagine you've completed step 1. You worked through all of this, identifying, you identified these criteria, and you selected a segment. And in this case, you selected this top one, landscape maintainers, and you finished your project with this. Well, you want to do another project, but you want to go down, and now you want to perform the next project on this next segment. So if to do save as using only step 1, basically all this work here, goes for you. When you go to step 2, it will be, there'll be nothing in it. That's the most common scenario for that. And save only step 1 and 2 is probably going to be less common. But one scenario would be that you really want to, you've got this list of outcomes and you want to very specifically prioritize them across different geographies, different points in the value chain, maybe slightly different changes in vertical markets. So you want to preserve those outcomes in step 2, and maybe you want to go to a different market, or you actually want to take a different list of outcomes and prioritize them.
I think that one, I think it could be fairly common there, Scott. We might think that it's a global market and we do discovery interviews in Europe and Asia and North America. And then we get outcomes that are so different between those 3 regions that we cannot, with a straight face, come up with a common list of 10 outcomes and use them around the world. So what do? We save as a couple times, and now we've got a Europe project, a North America project, and an Asia project, each with their own unique set of 10 outcomes for preference interviews.
Yeah, exactly. And another scenario that occurs to me is sometimes I've seen where a company, where you do a project and you get these really 2 categories of outcomes. Let's just say that you're making a new a new, so we'll just stick with my example here. You're making a hydraulic pump for a mower. And one set of outcomes really has to do with how the pump performs, how it gets rid of heat and its efficiency, all about the pump itself. And then you have another set of outcomes. It's kind of like doing business with us, like how quickly we respond to proposals and how quickly we can resolve issues in the field. And we might not want to have those outcomes intermixed. So we actually leave with kind of two projects. And so we'll have one set of outcomes about the product, one set of outcomes about our process or doing business with us, and then we'll have those prioritized separately. That's another instance I've seen as well.
Yeah, and Scott, that's an excellent one. And we've got a great question here from Sangamitra. When you save everything, does it save the preference interviews?
Saves everything, yes.
The whole shooting match.
Everything.
And that's another interesting use case. Should we look at the analyzed preference data? Imagine we had some big standard deviations and how that might lead us to save two different sets of preference interviews?
Great. For that one, let's go back to the real demo for that. Yes, great idea. So let's imagine that we've finished our project. We're in step three. So we've done our interviews and we're down here 3.6, analyzing preference data. And we look at all interviews. And I love this. I love this from blueprinting and from the mind of Dan Adams. Why do I love this so much? This is, well, most of us have taken statistics, and we're trying to understand, what's an acceptable level of variation. The reason I love this is it's visual. Right? Instead of comparing this number to that number, I'm looking at it. Look at vertical crushing. Look at how narrow the range of responses are. So we can feel really good that this average is a good number. We're looking at the how much variation so that we can understand, make a decision, can we trust the average number? With not a lot of variation, we can trust the average number. Now let's look at recycled content down here. We've got a lot of variation. You might be wondering, well, how much is too much? Well, less is better, but we do give you some feedback on that. When it's beyond plus or minus or 2 here, you can see that you have these extra little dark areas, dark bars. And you can see the number of standard deviations with the key right there. So I'm not sure I would want to go a little deeper into this recycled content and also this effort to seal the box and this glue separation performance. I want to look a little deeper. But then, of course, even within here, you can look at different slices of the market just to see how we might explain that variation. So in this case, we're looking at these geographies, and wow, look how those tighten up. That recycled content, that was the one that was very suspect. These different data slices, wow, these Asian e-retailers, much tighter still. Shippers, all of a sudden, look, the shippers are incredibly aligned on this recyclable content as far as how important they believe that it is. Yeah, so based on this, you might want to go back and do, maybe reprioritize with one of these segments, or maybe one of these, or let's imagine you've done this extra. In this case, we looked at different data slices and it explained the variation. Mm-hmm. Wow, what if we looked at these data slices and it still looked like this? They were still very broad. Well, that tells us we got to ask some more questions, and we might need to repeat some of step 3, some preference interviews with some sub segments of this, which is why you would want to save 1 and 2.
Yeah, and we're in 3.6, and 3.7 is where you prepare the market case. And Scott and I have kind of wrestled with this, but in this section here, you do have to pick one of those market views, either all interviews or North America, Europe, or Asia. That section 6 value proposition, you have to say, here's how I am defining my market segment for my market case. And this one happens to be the all interviews. But if we were not comfortable, if we felt the differences were great enough between North America, Europe versus Asia, that means we really have 2 different projects, right? How do you do it? Save as. So you would do a save as, save one of these as the Asia market case, and then do another one, save as the North America / Europe market case. So coming back to Sangamitra's question, you might do a save as just before your preference interviews because you need different sets of outcomes, or you might wait till all of your preference interviews are done and realize you really have 2 different market cases, 2 different projects, because the importance and satisfactions were different between regions or whatever, or points in the value chain.
Right. Great question. So we've covered search. We've covered how to use search to import an interview, and we've covered how save as is very simple, but probably more importantly with save as, the different reasons you might save everything, just step 1 or step 1 and 2. So any questions with that? I think, Dan, we can turn it over to any questions about that or anything, Dan, unless there's something else that you wanted to add to this.
No, that's it. We're open for any questions on this topic or any other topic. And while folks are thinking about that, I'll just share one use case that came up last week. Somebody from a client emailed us and said, hey, we've done several of our discovery interviews. We want to start playing around with getting ready for preference interviews, but we don't want to mess it up. Should we use the save as function? And I said, give that man a cigar. Yes, that's what we should be doing. It's excellent. Great. Any other questions? Well, Scott, thank you. Scott, do you want to mention what we got coming up next in a couple more weeks? And then we'll let these good people get on with their Monday.
I do. Let's look at it together, because I think it's good to keep checking back with where we have the master classes and what's coming up next. So this was today, managing Blueprinter data. Next, or in 2 weeks, you will be talking about interviewing customers in special situations. And as you probably all know, you'll get an email from me to add this to your calendar, but you don't have to wait for that. You can come out here anytime, add this one to your calendar. In fact, you can add any of the rest of them. We have these scheduled currently out through November 9th. So you don't have to wait for that email to add it to your calendar. But in 2 weeks, we'll look at some unusual interviewing situations.
I think this one should be a fun one, Scott. How do you do things differently at a trade show? What if you've got a great relationship and you've been talking to this customer a lot? Will it seem funny to start all over again with a bunch of blank sticky notes? There's a lot of different variations, and we'll just spend a few minutes talking about those next time we get together. Great. Well, any last questions before we say so long for now? Well, Scott, thank you for taking us over this. Good stuff today. If you all have questions, you don't have to wait till the next time we get together on Monday. And if anybody wants to compliment Scott on his new office setting there, I think that's very nice as well. But thank you all for joining us, and let us know if we can help. You all have a good Monday, okay?
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.